This breakdown of Darth Vader's lightsaber skills was originally prepared for an upcoming matchup on my channel, Darth Vader vs. Kyle Katarn. Rest assured, this matchup is happening, but as with my previous breakdown of Vodosiask Boss, uploaded back in February, this analysis is now outdated, not because my opinion of Vader has changed, but because my analytical format has evolved. While I stand by every word spoken in this sample, it ultimately overemphasizes the mechanical function of Vader's physical moveset while making only token mentions of his tactics and conduct. Furthermore, it betrays a narrow focus on his film appearances, which is particularly ironic coming from me given my position that Vader's average performance level is set by his expanded universe appearances. My logic is that the overwhelming majority of Vader's fights are featured in the EU, with most of these fights being against fresh opponents that he had no connection to, while his film duels are defined by circumstantial psychological factors, namely his apprehension fighting the men who originally crippled him, and the combination of his emotional baggage and overriding agenda where his son was concerned. The notion of Luke Skywalker, with his mere 4 years of experience, actually being an equal to Darth Vader, a reigning swordmaster with over 30 years of lightsaber training under his belt, is one that I find preposterous. Return of the Jedi novelization be damned. And for anyone who thinks I'm selling Luke short, let's not forget how many opponents who were clearly not on Vader's level who were able to give Luke some serious trouble. Furthermore, my position is that being far below Vader's level actually makes Luke's victory far more impressive, as he successfully punched up against an opponent who completely outclassed him. Anywho, with all of that out of the way, allow me to present this standalone profile of Darth Vader's martial proficiencies and weaponry. The tone for Anakin Skywalker's fighting style was set by the construction of his first Jedi lightsaber. Taken to the crystal caves of Ilum by Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin collected his sapphire and settled into meditation. In the ensuing vision quest, he was confronted by the shade of Darth Maul, who destroyed his training saber and handed him a true weapon, goading him to fight. Anakin channeled his rage and overpowered Maul, slicing the ghost in two. Maul was unconcerned and declared that he was the master that Anakin truly desired. The lightsaber that Anakin constructed was a power tool, a solid heavy-duty casing, a ridged hand grip, a throttle-style activator, and a beveled emitter shroud. The mechanism was powered by a high-output D80M power cell, and the crystal was dual-phase, allowing for the rapid lengthening of the blade, increasing his effective attack range by half a meter. It was a blunt instrument built for heavy combat, and the lightsaber carried by Darth Vader mirrored the design, simply incorporating carbon composite into the casing and swapping out the Ilum crystal for a bloodshine synthetic. During his training under Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin initially specialized in Shien, the classical variant of the Perseverance form. His physical moveset closely resembled that of his master, a result of both Kenobi's influence and the direct relationship between their respective disciplines, Shien being an evolution of Surisu. Anakin closely adhered to the Perseverance form's mantra of peace through superior firepower. His moveset was characterized by tight, efficient strikes and parries, hilt kept close to his body in a two-handed grip. However, where Kenobi was significantly more measured and conservative in his approach, Anakin was committed and aggressive, forcefully pressuring the defenses of his opponent. Furthermore, he supplemented his style with training in Ataru, employing the windmill flourishes and integrated physical strikes characteristic of the aggression form. As the most talented student of his generation, Anakin never encountered a true challenge until he tussled with Count Dooku, the reigning master of Makashi. His opening assault with Ataru-based Jar-Kai allowed him to initially gain ground, but he was quickly put on the defensive and disarmed. Anakin found greater success when he reverted to Shien, as his tight and forceful moveset proved to be a good foil for Dooku's dexterous and subversive fencing style. Anakin's downfall was ultimately his overcommitment, leaving himself open to counters. From this battle, Anakin learned that unconventional tricks and techniques were inherently unreliable, and that only his innate strength and skill could be trusted. He doubled down on his existing technique, transitioning from classical Shien to the more advanced Gemso. His basic moveset remained the same, though there were many subtle refinements and tweaks. He focused his offensive technique and improved his attack transitions by blending Ataru flourishes into his tight moveset, while performing his strikes and parries with greater control and intensity. Anakin's style was built around directly leveraging his immense power in the Force via physical enhancement, his efficient moveset allowing for the generation of maximum speed and power. He would hammer opponents with blitzkrieg offensives, defending when necessary with forceful two-handed blocks, wielding refined technique as a blunt instrument. The pros of Anakin's style were demonstrated in his rematch with Dooku, his sheer strength allowing him to simply bully through the Count's delicate style and overpower him. The cons were demonstrated on Mustafar against Obi-Wan Kenobi, who exploited Anakin's overcommitment and slipped in devastating counters. While Anakin did learn from experience, figuring out which techniques were most practical and tweaking things accordingly, he never learned from his mistakes, continuing to give himself over to reckless aggression and rage. With the consequences of this oversight burned into his very flesh, Darth Vader could no longer leave it unaddressed. Though Vader extensively retooled his fighting style to accommodate his new cyborg body, the basic ingredients remained the same. Tight, efficient strikes and parries, hilt kept close to the body in a two-handed grip for maximum control and power. Where the changes showed was in the execution. Vader followed a slow and steady rhythm, timing out his strikes and allowing his cybernetics to do the heavy lifting. His wrist rotation flourishes were reworked into dexterous deflection parries, while his agility-based offensive posture was replaced by a stalwart strength-based affair, cumbersome but devastatingly powerful. Whether through force empowerment or physical enhancement, Anakin Skywalker spent his entire life operating under the not unjustified assumption that he was the most physically powerful combatant in his setting. He built his fighting style around leveraging his strength as directly and efficiently as possible. However, though the basic nature of his fighting style remained consistent, Anakin and Vader differed radically in application. The Jedi relied on heavy offense to overwhelm, the Sith relied on active defense to subvert. Darth Vader would hold his ground, step into attacks, and shove the opponent off balance with a shunt block, setting up for devastating counters. When forced to take an offensive posture, he would target the opponent's blade, deliberately striking their raised block in order to stagger them. His success was predicated on his ability to essentially brace himself against and overpower the opponent, which made him most effective against those who attempted to resist him, whether holding their ground or fighting back. The pros of Vader's style were demonstrated against Old Ben Kenobi and against Luke Skywalker on Bespin, his conservative application of strength allowing him to turn aside their attacks and easily overpower them in the bind, aggressively dissecting their defenses. The cons were demonstrated in his final battle with Luke, and did come up on Bespin in certain instances. Vader's lack of mobility left him at a disadvantage against fighters who took the path of least resistance, dodging around his blade to slip in counters. And as a fighter whose dominance is predicated on his strength advantage, Vader's worst-case scenario is a confrontation with an opponent whose strength is equal or greater, which is what he faced against Luke. However, despite his physical limitations, Darth Vader's remarkable skill is not to be discounted, and it must be remembered that his entire approach is built around compensating for his weaknesses. He is perfectly capable of leveraging his dexterity and trading with opponents, or putting up a stonewall defensive posture. On Bespin, Luke gained some ground and scored a solid hit, but he was still conclusively defeated. And on board the second Death Star, though Luke successfully overpowered his father, he still had to fight Darth Vader for every inch.